자유주의 조국을 위하여 항상 준비하자!
North Korean leader Kim Jong-un's willingness to talk about ending his country's nuclear weapons program, as conveyed to a South Korean envoy, is the basis for the expected summits between Kim and South Korean President Moon Jae-in and with U.S. President Donald Trump. However, at a conference in Seoul, North Korea analysts note the leadership in Pyongyang uses a term for denuclearization that has multiple meanings.
They translate shut down and freeze, and also suspension and shielding, and also disabling into the same word in Korean. 가동 중단.
Many suspect that Kim will only agree to freeze or marginally reduce his nuclear and missile arsenal for relief from harsh U.S.-led sanctions. North Korea in the past also demanded the withdrawal of U.S. forces in Korea as a condition to give up its nuclear deterrent. The U.S. is not likely to agree to either scenario. Trump himself has said there is a risk that his unconventional approach to diplomacy in agreeing to a summit before any terms, progress, or outcomes are set could fail. However, beginning with talks at the highest level could also produce a mandate that would drive the process forward.
The commitment to denuclearization from both sides, from top down, then opens up a path towards diplomacy and a path towards the negotiation of those details.
Even though the U.S. insists there will be no concessions until concrete denuclearization measures are taken, South Korea could provide an economic incentive by seeking an exemption from sanctions to reopen the jointly run Kaesong Industrial Complex.
Sanctions, or the loosening of sanctions, is what we declare it to be.
North Korea is estimated to have approximately 30 nuclear weapons, hundreds of medium and long-range missiles, and is continuing to produce fissile material at both its nuclear reactor in Yongbyon and in hidden uranium enrichment facilities. It would likely take years to negotiate verification details, access for international inspectors, and to complete the dismantlement process.
Once rejected by North Korea as human scum, President Donald Trump's latest pick for National Security Advisor has called for regime change in North Korea, prompting worries in Asia ahead of a historic summit between Washington and Pyongyang. Trump announced in a tweet he was replacing Herbert Raymond McMaster with John Bolton, a former U.S. ambassador to the United Nations who has advocated the use of military force against North Korea and Iran and has previously been rejected as a negotiating partner by Pyongyang. "This is worrisome news," said Kim Hak-yong, conservative politician and head of the National Defense Committee of South Korea's parliament. North Korea and the United States need to have dialogue, but this only fuels worries over whether the talks will ever happen. At Seoul's presidential Blue House, which has been forced to navigate between the unpredictable personalities of leaders in both Pyongyang and Washington, officials were circumspect. "Our stance is that if a new road opens, we have to go that path," a senior Blue House official told reporters. Bolton has much knowledge on the issues regarding the Korean peninsula and most of all, we know him to be one of the US president's aides who is trusted. He said Chung Zi-Yong, South Korea's National Security Office head, had not yet spoken with Ambassador Bolton and that Chung's reaction to Mr. McMaster's dismissal was not bad. Another administrative official in Seoul expressed regret over the loss of camaraderie Mr. McMaster had built with his South Korean counterpart as they had tackled North Korea's nuclear issue together. Both officials requested not to be named due to the sensitivity of the issue. Ambassador Bolton had described Trump's plan to meet North Korean leader Kim Jong-un as diplomatic shock and awe and said it would be an opportunity to deliver a threat of military action. I think this session between the two leaders could well be a fairly brief session where Trump says, "Tell me you have begun total denuclearization, because we're not going to have protracted negotiations. You can tell me right now or we'll start thinking of something else," he told Washington's WMAL radio station. Former South Korean intelligence official Nam Sung-wook said Trump may not even get the opportunity to deliver that message. Bolton being tapped for this position makes for a very difficult situation where the United States-North Korea summit may not even happen, he said. It's going to be a rocky path even before the summit. The meeting is supposed to happen by the end of May, but an exact time and place have yet to be settled on. Pyongyang had no immediate comment about Bolton, whose criticism of then North Korean leader Kim Jong-il and Pyongyang's human rights record in 2003 spurred state media to call him human scum and bloodsucker. North Korean officials would not recognize him as a representative of the United States government or talk with him because of his political vulgarity and psychopathological condition, state media said at the time.
International efforts to get North Korea to come to the table about its nuclear program and the threat it poses to the Korean Peninsula and beyond have intensified in recent weeks. Following a White House announcement that President Donald Trump would meet with North Korean leader Kim Jong-un, North Korea has not formally acknowledged any such meeting. Over the past several days, representatives from the United States, Japan, South Korea, and North Korea have been talking in Finland, Sweden, and San Francisco to formalize an agenda for talks. Gilbert Rossman with the Foreign Policy Research Institute says Kim Jong-un has one very clear goal in mind.
He wants recognition of North Korea as a kind of an equal state, and to have that, he has to keep his nuclear weapons, or to have some amazing relationship where the whole region recognizes North Korea as a strong power which will be heavily rewarded. So he wants to shape the future of the Korean Peninsula and get the right balance of power in Northeast Asia to preserve his regime and give him clout.
VOA Korean Service reporter Connie Kim says UN sanctions have forced Kim Jong-un to consider talks, resulting in Kim's recent statement that he was open to dialogue with Seoul.
He's extending an olive branch to South Korea, but at the same time, he's threatening the U.S. that he has a nuclear button on his desk, which is he's probably wanting to make that rift between the two allies and get an ease of sanctions.
John Lanchowski is president of the Institute of World Politics. He says the United States should attempt to change the narrative Kim's citizens have heard for decades.
I think that we need to start thinking not simply about relations with the North Korean government. We have to think about relations with the North Korean people. This is public diplomacy, and that means connecting with them. It means letting them know that we care about their human rights, that we are not the monsters that the regime makes us out to be.
Gilbert Rossman says regardless of whether the talks become reality, expectations should be muted.
People who are getting their hopes up that this meeting is going to provide a real answer, I think are too optimistic. What we really can expect is we begin a process of negotiations where North Korea promises something and pledges to go forward, and then all of the other countries, China, Russia, Japan, South Korea, enter into the fray trying to shape this process, and North Korea tries to play on the differences, what each country wants to get an advantage. It may sound like we're getting denuclearization, but that's so far off.
Last week, the U.S. National Security Advisor said Washington is determined to keep up its policy of maximum pressure on North Korea to denuclearize.